We are concerned not merely with the technical problem of securing and maintaining peace, but also with the important task of education and enlightenment.
So it's sort of moving along, and I think now we're starting to get more into where people are starting to realize it may not be ETs. You can before you couldn't say that, but now you can actually say that, and people sort of know what you're talking about. You know, they'll just say, "Well, it's interdimensional" or whatever. That it's much more complex than people think it is. And when you start looking at the patterns and stuff like that, you realize that it's running the show. We still think that, or even last night I was on a radio show, and I actually said, you know, we were in Afghanistan and we lost a war against a bunch of Stone Age tribes, like donkey jockeys driving around, and we lost the war. But now we have this $740 billion defense budget, national insecurity budget, and everybody's trying to get the money, and they're saying, we had trouble with the Taliban, with these Stone Age guys, but if you give us enough money, we'll take on these aliens. There are thousands of years of guys, but we'll take them on, don't worry. We handle it. And you're selling, it's like selling cars. It's like you're selling a cure to cancer. Or I remember one article I put up it was 1975, big headline. We will be on, we're guaranteed we're going to be on Mars in 1975 with landed craft, guys. And people are always selling stuff. We're going to go to the moon. We got a new program to put a nuclear thing on the moon and stuff like that, and it's all this thing about there's a pile of money, there's no wars going on, we got all this new money now, $740 billion. Even he said, I pointed out, the amount the U.S. defense budget went up this year is $25 billion. The increase, the Canadian defense budget is $24 billion. So their increase is bigger than ours, and that there's so much money there. And everybody's trying to sell something, and in the Pentagon, everybody's trying to steal each other's money.
You think that's what's going on right now with some of the videos we see leaked, like the Jeremy Corbell videos, the night vision ones where they're flying the UFO, the triangle one over the carriers and stuff?
Yeah, everybody's got an agenda. It's the old joke is, like, if you're a one-star general in the Pentagon, what's your main aim? To become a two-star general.
Right.
I mean, everybody wants a bigger budget, everybody wants more people, everybody's got new plans and stuff, or you see it in organizations. When you go into an organization, somebody else new comes in, and what do? They start changing everything. It's like, we're going to make it better, we're going to make it bigger. And I think that's what's going on now, is that there's all this money, and everybody's scrambling and fighting, and it makes sense that they would be, you know, scrapping, because that's what they were asking me last night. But there's this new sort of group that's been formed at the Pentagon, and Elizondo's gone against them. Elizondo said, these are the guys who've been covering this thing up for 75 years. And so they said, well, what's the, you know, why are these people fighting? And I said, because there's $740 billion.
Right, and you think that's still going on? You think it's more about money? Do you think there's actual guys still promoting the cover-up and
well, everybody's protecting their turf. So I said, like, I quoted Walker. So you did the book cover for UFOs, Area 51 and Government Informants. That all had to do with Eric Walker. And Walker knew what was going on. And Hal Putoff went in there, Kit Green went in there, they're all trying to, after we put these interviews out, and realized this guy knew what was going on right from the word go. And that's what he said to us, because he was an older guy, and people were saying, come on, Dr. Walker, you're old, come on, you've got a chance to tell your story or whatever. And he said, look, this is just curiosity. Tell me, this is all you want. That is not sufficient need to know. You're wasting your time. Leave it alone. Why should we change the rules to satisfy your curiosity? And it's the whole idea is, if you're the black ops guy, you think you're saving the world. And you are going to be damned if Lou Elizondo, some clown that resigned in disgust, is now going to tell us what to do. We're making the policy here, we're making the law here, and we are not going to let Lou Elizondo, he thinks he's got a better idea. So it's this infighting thing that if you've got the control of the technology, you've got the hardware, you are not going to give it up. There's no way. This is your turf, and because Lou Elizondo thinks he can do it better, or you think it's unfair that they've got this stuff, they don't care. They really don't care. We've got the technology. We're going to save the world from the Russians or Chinese or whatever they're
I've always thought that's probably what is going on. I think that a lot of these guys in these alphabet groups know UFOs are real,
Sure.
and they don't care what they are, where they're from. They just want the technology.
And that's why the other thing that people always forget is that you talk about the invisible college group. So then why the invisible college? They say, well, because they're afraid to be outed or whatever, because they're whatever. No, the one story was that Tyler D, who I actually talked to, he talked about this download experience, and he gets this idea in his head, and it ends up becoming this company and this medical technology, whatever, and the company, according to Pasolka, $100 million on NASDAQ. So if you
And that was a company that dealt with cancer treatments.
Well, he was working on cancer for kids, whatever, but it was some sort of technology that had to do with melding metal and not rejecting tissue. I don't know really, but he had this invention come in his head, and he wanted to put it on a space shuttle and test it, and they said, we're not putting it on a space shuttle, and it ended up getting out, but that people don't realize that if you get a patent, it could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. This is big stuff. The guy that did the duplicating DNA, have you heard that story? What's his name? The guy that did had the sparkly raccoon meets him at his thing. He won the Nobel Prize for the PCR. They're using for COVID for testing.
PCR test.
Yeah, the PCR test. He got it, and he couldn't convince the company to test this thing or to get it for real. And then when they finally did it, they gave him a $10,000 bonus, and they turned around and sold it for $300 million. And he was always upset, but you got to realize how much money is involved in some of these patents. So if you're sitting in the background, you're Eric Davis or somebody who's working on technology and stuff, if you're on the very verge and you think you're going to be able to develop putting bulls in trailers or through metal or whatever it is, are you going to give it up before you sign your patent?
That's right.
There's all these vested interests. It's always to do with money that these people, and you can't blame them. If you're in there, you're not going to suddenly just roll over dead because somebody says, I've got a better idea, release all the technology because we're going to use it to save the world or whatever. They go, forget it. I mean,
has Eric Davis said anything interesting lately?
He's gone quiet. I mean, well, he did get attacked by
after the
Greenwald has attacked him as being
right.
a guy, and I can comment on that because I knew Eric Davis 20 years ago. I knew him when he was had been let go by NIDS. He was the chief physicist for NIDS, and I had met with him because they were interested. NIDS was interested in the Canadian stuff because the Canadians had talked about metals, propulsion, stuff like that. So they were sort of talking to me, and I heard he was kind of upset when he got let go by Bigelow. And he was talking, and I can absolutely say, because Greenwald says, oh, he's just full of it, he didn't brief the Senate on crash saucer stuff. I know Eric Davis. Eric Davis is probably the sharpest knife in the drawer.
He doesn't seem to want to make that up.
And he's the guy, Elizondo said, he couldn't lie if he tried. And I would agree that Eric Davis will get very upset, and he'll actually say things he shouldn't be saying. He just gets wound up, and he gets, like me, he gets into it. But Eric Davis is not making anything up. And his whole problem was, because I had a dispute with him about stuff I'd said, I shouldn't have said or whatever, and with him it came down to, what you got to realize is, the reason why a lot of these guys don't talk is if you got the answer. So if I say to you, okay, Matt, do you know the 12 guys that are actually running the show? And then you'd say, yeah, but if I tell you you're going to the New York Times, I'm going to have to deny it, and then nobody will ever talk to me again. So they're all the same as you and me. They're trying to figure out, you're trying to figure out what do I know, I'm trying to figure out what does Elizondo know, Elizondo's trying to figure out what the Black Ops guys know, and everybody's playing their game and they're got this material, but if you expose your source, then nobody talks to you because you can't keep your mouth shut. And that was my problem. They cut me out because I don't really care. I don't have a degree, I don't have a vested interest, I'm not making money, I don't really care. I'm just trying to figure out what it is, and when I get something I think is people should know, then I basically say it. Whereas if you've got a vested interest, whether it's a patent, whether it's trying to get more material for discovering your zero-point energy, whatever, everybody's doing it. And I think Puthoff had actually said, there was a quote they gave me yesterday, that Puthoff said, they will release absolutely nothing. Zero. Never.
Never.
And that comes down to this idea. And I think what I would say, and I'm guessing, is that they are so far away from what this thing is all about. They're making it look like they're on the very verge, and but they're so far away. But so if you're in that position where you're like 100 years away from discovering this thing, you're not going to put your stuff on the table because it's a card game. If you put your cards on the table, and the Russians say they're going to put their cards on the table, and then they look at your cards and say, oh, we've decided not to put our cards on the table, and you've got two of the cards that they need. It's this whole game about everybody.
You think that's what TTSA is doing with their metal
Well,
you know,
they
stuff.
were trying to get a control of the material. They're trying to get a control, because they're still in this nuts and bolts thing, that we can learn something from the material. But I actually asked Hal Puthoff about this. And Desta and I are doing a book on apports. So it was the whole idea. I said, Hal, this is apport material. This is, you had this happen, because it actually happened in when they were doing the experiments with Uri Geller. The Uri Geller went and he cut his lip on this piece of metal, and they pulled a piece of metal out. It was a flight pin from Edgar Mitchell. And Edgar Mitchell said, "How'd you get my flight pin? I lost that in Houston 2 years ago." And then when they went back to the lab, they're in the lab, and Uri Geller's in the other room, and they're standing there with Hal Puthoff and Mitchell. And all of a sudden, tink! They go behind, and the back half of the pin is on the floor. And that's this whole thing about the stuff's dropping out of the ceiling. It's apports. It's manifestations and apports. That's what was going on in Skinwalker Ranch. That's what you're trying to figure out. The woman comes home. She's got all the groceries. Takes all the groceries out, puts them in the cupboard, and goes in the next room. Comes back in. All the groceries are back in the bag. They're trying to figure out how do you do this? I mean, this is technology. And so that's why I said to Hal, this is apport material. They're dropping this stuff. It's the theory of wow. They're dropping this stuff, and everybody's got, look at this piece of metal. Holy cow! If you forget this piece of metal, we can analyze it. And it's got all this weird isotopes and stuff like that. But to me, it's just they're making you think. It's not going to build a flying saucer from this stuff, because I don't think it's as important. But so TTSA was trying to get control of all the metal, because they figured the metal was the thing. That's the propulsion system. If we figure out the metal, we're going to get the thing. We're going to build a flying saucer. We're all going to be rich. We're going to have the house on the hill and all this kind of stuff. And it all comes back to the same sort of thing, is trying to control the material. Whereas I think it's going to be a lot more consciousness-driven type stuff.
Absolutely.
Where
100%.
How much time we got left?
Probably getting pretty close, eh?
15 minutes.
Oh, okay. So,
You want to talk about some of the injuries? I know that was something that came up. How about infighting in TTSA and the guys I've been following UFO Twitter? What's going on? I know you follow those guys UFO Twitter. I was talking disclosure, and then.
well, what I say with the fighting thing is it's always gone on. And the way I pointed out is that in the UFO community, it's different than in the academic community. So if you're an academic community and you're a professor and you're making $135,000 a year, you got five months off a year, and you got these theories about whatever, and I come on, I'm in the same department as you, and I got completely different theories, you don't care. You're making your $135,000 a year, you got your thing, who cares? But in the UFO community, nobody's making any money. So then all you've got, as I say, the only thing you got in the UFO community for currency is your ideas
Your reputation.
and your ego. And so your ego is attached to what you own and what your ideas are. And so everybody's protecting, so the turf war is the ego, is my idea is better than yours, and this is the sort of the battle going, but it's always gone on. I mean, and I was on this radio broadcast, I didn't bring it up, but I can bring it up now, is people think, oh, this is terrible, like, how could this be? I said, well, at least they aren't throwing stuff at people. When Bill Moore gave the speech in 1989 that told about the fact that counterintelligence was running this operation on the UFO community and putting all this nonsense into the UFO community to distort it, they were throwing stuff at him on stage. They had to leave with security, they had to move him out of the building. And in 1989, John Lear had this whole thing, he had all these ideas about these underground bases and they're going to steal your soul on the moon and all this really weird stuff. And he was running the MUFON conference in 1989. People forget all this stuff. He was running the MUFON conference, and then they, at the end, he was bringing in the guy, the pale horse, like Cooper, and all these weird ideas and stuff like that. And MUFON was going, we can't let this go. John, you're not bringing these people in. And he said, okay, I'll have my own conference. So they had 2 MUFON conferences that year. John had a conference down the road from the others. It's always gone on. It's always been this fighting thing that's gone on. People get into it. I remember even arguing with James Oberg from NASA, and he would be on. This is the early days of the internet when there was no pictures or anything on the internet. It was just there was chat boards, and there were these just typed chat boards with letters and stuff like that. And the 2 big were sex and UFOs were the 2 big topics. And there was alt paranormal UFO, there was alt UFO, all these different things, and you get on these different groups. And Oberg was on the one, and I remember I used to argue with him all the time. And he would say something, and then I'd say, okay, this big James guy, he's big, one of those biggest skeptics, and I'd sort of hammer him, and I'd do all this sort of stuff. And then 30 seconds later, he'd come back with something else. I go, and I'd spend hours again, and I would make this thing, and then 30 seconds later, he'd be back again. And I suddenly realized, like, this is a waste of time.
Yeah, that's right.
He's just not listening, he just goes to the next thing. And the only way I could get rid of the guy was I said, hey James, I mean I can do that at 3 o'clock in the morning, I can do it 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and you respond in 30 seconds. Do you actually, are you doing your job? Aren't you supposed to be working? And then he sort of left.
And I
He sort of
see
gave up.
the same stuff going on Facebook, even in the last few days.
Yeah, the people they love it, and it's a male thing. That's where you hear this thing about the female. Chris Bledsoe's message from the female is that we're at this point in time that the female is crying. She feels sorry for the earth because we're about to shit the bed type thing, and we have this male ego, and she talks about this fact that the female energy has to be raised up. This sort of we over me, because now it's me over we. It's the separation. It's me versus you. It's like a football game. It's all turned into a game where the ends justifies the means. We're going to win the game. We don't care how we win the game. And the female thing is more into family. Like, let's be one and let's get together in the love of the family and stuff. Whereas the male thing is, who gives a shit about family? We're making money here, And that's the whole thing where that shift has to take place. And the whole joke is, hopefully the females will get it together before the males blow the place up. Because that's what we're into. We're into this fighting thing, and that's what you see in ufology. You see a lot of guys who are into this fighting thing and this ego thing, that they're battling back and forth. But it's always gone on in ufology, and in fact it goes on anywhere. You take a look at U.S. politics. I mean, you take the Senate and the House of Representatives. I mean, they can't decide which bathroom to use. I mean, it's like totally split. I mean, it's even the United States of America. I always make the joke. The United States of America used to be the greatest country in the world, and became the greatest country in the world because it was the United States of America. And I show the first coin that was developed by the United States. It has in the middle of the coin the penny coin and the dollar coin. We are one. Has the 13 colonies, all the 13 colonies, all the 13 rings, all listed together, and in the middle of the coin it says we are one. Well, the United States is no longer the United States of America. It's totally divided. It's the blue states, the red states, and these guys and those guys, and it's getting more divided as you go along. Even in Canada, you see that. Alberta says, "Oh, we're going to see. We shouldn't have to pay taxes to, for the rest of the people, and we're going to pull away, and we don't have any representation." And then Quebec wants to break away, and you get this separation thing. That you see it breaking up, breaking up, and how do you turn that around? Because everybody has this ego thing that they want to defend their turf, and nobody ever backs off. It's almost like this idea when you have an argument with somebody, and I've stopped really the arguing because I went to Stanton Friedman's files, and I realized that Stanton Friedman had worked on this for 61 years, and he would always do the thing. He'd say, Grant, I went after Shermer or one of the skeptics, Klaas or something. We debated at Oxford. And 78% of the people in Oxford believed I won the debate. But when you go look at his files and you see all the guys that he argued, and every skeptic, Stan would argue with them and go on. And how many skeptics did he ever change? Nobody. It's like nobody changes. And it's a total waste of time.
Yeah.
So then you go back to what Max Planck said, who was the father of quantum physics, who basically said the whole idea that science advances, and I say ufology advances, one funeral at a time. That the old buggers who can't let go die off, and the new people come along, your kids or whatever, and they go, yeah, Star Wars, we know all about this, and video games, and it's a simulated universe, yeah, we know all this stuff. And that's how the thing moves. Nobody's convincing anybody. It's just this flow of time that eventually we'll get there, and hopefully we get there before we blow the place up.
What about Chris Bledsoe? What's going on with him these days?
I actually heard from him this morning. I'm contacting him about one of the things I sort of feel sorry because he's the guy that sort of they came to him. The one of the thing that he said was kind of interesting was he made this comment. Somebody did an article and they quoted him as saying the government came to him and said they don't like us. And we know that we know that you like us.
Who doesn't like who? Sorry,
the intelligence doesn't like the government. And they came to Chris and they said, they don't like us. These high-level officials came and said to Chris, they don't like us. But we know they like you. And we'd like to know what's going on. And I said to Chris, I said, did they actually say that to you? And he said, yeah. Said a couple organizations
brought
said
him
it to
to
me.
Camp David, maybe.
And that's what he said. Chris says, I said to him, so why do you need me? And they said this thing, because they won't talk to us, so we're going through, and that's what Pendolfi had said. This one thing I posted, I went to Dan Smith, And I said, Dan, is this true? And I should actually read it if I can remember the whole thing, because I said, Dan, is this true? Did Ron actually say this? And it was the thing that, because we cannot control the phenomena, we watch the people who are affected by the phenomena. Right. And I said, did he actually say that? And then he writes this thing, and he says that first part, and then he says, the next part is pretty good too. So he says, or I can't remember the next part, but then he says, it ends, it says, and there may be aliens, however defined. There may be ETs, however defined. And so he posts it, and I said, so Dan, is that you speaking, or is that intelligence? And he comes with that, and he replies, perhaps. So you're playing this mind game with these people.
Right. It makes me wonder why, like I'm still trying to figure out, the most fascinating thing is all the people that came to see Chris Bledsoe. And then Chris Bledsoe on Facebook, he posts pictures of him in NASA and in all these high-level places. Like, what the hell's, like, Tyler D, what are these guys in NASA doing? They're obviously into consciousness studies, looking into Chris Bledsoe.
And apparently it had something to do with the lady, that when they realized he had this lady, they all knew the connection to the lady, that this lady is this important connection. And as you showed, like, I mean, he was in the one he has with Tyler D, and he's in the astronaut conference room. There's only been 350 people ever in the astronaut conference room ever. And he was on the gangplank where they put the Apollo 11 astronauts onto the thing to show that he had this connection. He told me when he was with Tyler D, he'd be moving on these big Land Rover things. He'd be moving there, and the people would just be like, opening doors and stuff like this. And he said Tyler D has the keys to the place. He's a super powerful guy there, and so that's where I say you got to listen to those guys like Chris Bledsoe, because it appears that they are contacting him, and that's what I said to him today. I was saying, this whole idea that they're fighting, that there's this new group, and they're fighting, and they're pretending that they're going to start all over again. We're going to do UFOs. We're going to investigate UFOs. He said, yeah, I've been contacted. So this is this morning. So this whole idea is that he's getting these things, but he always won't say who he's actually talking to or whatever.
And then there's this weird religious component to it too in the Bledsoe story.
Yeah, and same with Beta Andreasen. But that's the whole thing. It's reflective of what you believe. Even Kit Green said that. If you read Kit Green's, he did the study of the DNA and the stuff, and that's what he says. If you read the Peniston book, he says that they discovered, looking at all these people, that it was reflective that two people can be standing beside each other and see something completely different. That it has a lot to do with your belief system. And that's into this consciousness thing. That it's not separate things. It's like you are, John Wheeler said, it's a participatory universe. You are part of what you're looking at. And people don't want to believe that. They want to believe it's this separation thing and not go into this set thing where you create the reality around you. There is no other
What do
rule.
you think about the simulation theory? Do you think that it fits into it anyway?
The more you look, the more it looks like this is all like a giant illusion. You create your reality. Even Desta's channeling over and over again. Everybody says the same thing. It's this idea that it's you may plan your life before you come in, and then it's this stage play that sort of runs out and it becomes less physical. Or the way I sum it up, and I guess we can end with this today. The way I sum it up is it's going to be less physical than people think it is. It's going to be way more spiritual than people think it is. That's really going to upset some people. Because people don't want this to be spiritual. Right. They went to church, we don't go back to church or whatever. And it's going to be at least 1,000 times more complex than people think it is. And it will not have a hint of capitalism, which really pisses people off. Because that's what Tom DeLonge said. This is like a hive mentality, and they may not have souls. The same as in the 14th century, the Roman Catholic Church said women didn't have souls. This is this idea that they don't have souls, so we can kill them. But it's this concept that it is a hive mentality. When you take a look at it, it is like a kibbutz or like a Hutterite colony or whatever, where everybody's just doing their job and stuff like that, and that's not going to go over. And so, if you're the government, are you going to disclose that? I mean, you're going to tell people, no, we got to quit this, rape, pillage, kill, and steal stuff. We all got to work together and stuff. That's not going to go over very well.